The other reference data type available in Vyper is called dynamic arrays. Dynamic array allows the length of the array to change at runtime up to a maximum bound that is set during compilation. Let's create a dynamic array of type uint256. I'll call this nums, and to declare a dynamic array, I'll type dyn array and then brackets. Inside the brackets, we'll need to specify two things. The first will be the type of the array, let's say uint256. And then the next will be the maximum length of this dynamic array. For example, let's say 3. Let's also make this a public state variable, public. Okay, to show you some operations that are available for dynamic array, I'll write some code inside the constructor. Say deploy def __init __ parentheses. Currently, the dynamic array has length 0. There are no elements inside this dynamic array. To insert the element, we can call the method append on nums. So say self.nums. This will refer to this state variable, and we want to append the number to this dynamic array. So say append. Let's put the number 11. So after this operation, what would the array look like? Well, to begin with, the array started out as empty. After append, we're going to have 11, only one element in this dynamic array. To give you another example, I'm going to copy this and then paste it here. And let's append another number, let's say 22. So now what does this dynamic array look like? Well, before we had 11, and to this we called append. So this 22 will come after this 11, so come over here. And now the length of the dynamic array is 2. Let me show you one more. Next, I'm going to append 33. And now the dynamic array has 11, 22, and 33. The length of the dynamic array currently is 3. We specify that the maximum length that this dynamic array can be is 3. So what happens if we append another number? Let's say self.append 44. Well, what's going to happen is that this code will fail to execute since we specify that the maximum length is 3 and we already have 3 elements and we're pushing another element. If this was possible, this will make the length of the array 4. Trying to append to a dynamic array where it hit the maximum length will revert. So this code will revert. So we'll comment it out. Okay, so we learned how to append elements to a dynamic array. There are other operations that we can perform on a dynamic array. For example, let's say that we wanted to remove the last element from this dynamic array. Currently, the last element will be 33. To remove this, we can call self.nums.pop. This will remove the last element. The last element is 33, so 33 will be removed from the dynamic array. And of course, since we removed the element, the length of the dynamic array will now be equal to 2. Now, when we call the function pop, it's going to also return the element that was popped. In this case, it is equal to 33. So let's assign this to a variable. Let's say x of type uint256 is equal to, and then call the function pop. We can also clear out all of the elements by assigning an empty array. For example, we can type self.nums is equal to an empty array. So now the length of this dynamic array will be equal to 0. We can also assign all 3 elements at once. So over here, we append it 3 times, but we can do this in one step. For example, say self.nums is equal to 11, 22, and 33. Now, to make this example a little bit more interesting, instead, what I'm going to do is append the last element that was removed. This will be x. And later when we access the elements of the dynamic array, I don't want all the elements to be equal to x, so I'll change this a little bit, x plus 1 and x plus 2. Okay, let's try compiling the contract now and deploying the contract. If you forgot to activate the Vyper plugin like me, then you can do this by clicking on the plugin icon and then searching for Vyper. Then activate the Vyper compiler. Once it's activated, you'll see a Vyper icon, so click on it and let's compile this contract. Once the contract is compiled, let's now deploy this. Inside the deployment tab, make sure that you selected dynr.py and then deploy it. Okay, and then let's call some functions. So the last element was x, and then we set it equal to the 0th element. So if you try to access the 0th element, then we get 33, the first element 34, and the second element 35. Okay, how about if we try to access an element where the index will be out of bounds? For example, let's put a 3 and then call it. And what you'll notice over here inside the transaction log is that the transaction failed. This is because we try to access an array element that doesn't exist. So that's dynamic arrays.